Welcome to the show. For all those who watch on YouTube, please take a moment and click the subscribe button and click the bell for notifications. Please like this episode and share it on your social media. Today on Mr. Nashville Talks, our favorite Oak Ridge boy, William Lee Golden, and we're joined by his son also, Chris Golden. Well, today we have an incredible show for you because I am in the presence of greatness. I am here with William Lee Golden, Chris Golden, and they have so much going on, some incredible projects, and we're going to talk a lot about them today. But I tell you what, to be sitting here next to you, if my little self when I was 6 and 7 years old knew that I would be sitting here talking to you today, I think I would just been floored because I loved your music, the Oaks, and I just appreciate you for doing this. Of course, we knew each other a little bit through Dottie Rambo as well.
Yeah.
And but you all been busy with the pandemic. You all didn't gain the extra weight. You got out there and did some work.
Yeah.
You got these three.
It's one of the most productive times in my life, really, was this pandemic.
Yeah.
When it hit, we were all out on the road. Chris was out doing solo stuff. I was with the Oak Ridge Boys. Rusty was over in Bahrain for 6 months playing music, and but we were all sent home. And it's a vision that I had about a year and a half before we started recording. I had a vision to get my sons together and us all get together and record again. I wanted to take them back to where I come from, basically, and the old songs that I sang. And so it started out with 3 or 4 or 5 songs in my mind that I wanted to record with them because I love their musicianship and their harmonies and their vocal singing. And I just wanted to put it all together. And again, it had been 25 years, like I said, since we toured together. And after I went back with the Oaks, the whole time I was away from the Oaks, we were out touring together.
Yeah.
So, and I miss that, man. I miss not only being with them, my sons, but their great talent and their professionalism out there on the road. So during the pandemic, I called them and invited them right here, and we started in this room, around this piano, playing and singing songs, old songs. I know I got Rusty to come over, and we're singing the old song, Love Lifted Me, and then I'd sing this song, Welcome to My World, and songs like that. I'd get him to get the keys for it, and we'd play different songs, and I'd get him to play songs that he had been performing over in Bahrain, American music where he was performing there. But getting us all together, it was when the pandemic hit, it was about 3 or 4 weeks into it, man. I had to turn the television off, get away from news. Everything that was coming out of television seemed negative to me. Yeah. And people hating everybody, hating each other and everybody and everything. Seemed like there was too much hate and violence coming out of television. I turned it off and got away from TV for at least 6 months. But it was during that time that my vision started getting stronger. And I mean, I couldn't get these songs out of my mind. And I'd call these guys, I'd write different songs. And the more I got to diving into this, my visions were, all at once these other songs kept coming. And then I got these guys to bring songs inspired you in your youth. Let's sing them too. So that's what we did. During the most negative time in a pandemic, we got together as a family and turned a negative situation into some positive creation. And we recreated a lot of these old songs, and we did it with our feeling and our music and our harmonies. And that's what I wanted. I could hear it in my mind, but being able to hear it on tape
Yeah.
of us singing together, the richness of those harmonies
Yes.
is just like, that's what I could hear, and I could hear it in my mind, but then getting it on, going in the studio, it was a uplifting time for us in a pandemic. You know, there was Ben Isaacs come down with COVID, and by the time we finished recording, Chris came down with it the last week at the end of the session, the week we finished cut. And one of the other musicians came down with it just before Chris.
He's the one that gave it to me.
But he had it in the studio. Steve Henson he thought he had sinus infection. His doctor was treating him for sinus. And
Steve, he wound up being in the ICU for a couple of weeks.
he was, the day after we finished recording, he was there sitting, feeling bad during the sessions and sniffing. He said, yes, man, are you sure you're okay? Yeah, I was dealing with a sinus, and he was just said, I don't feel good, but
He didn't play that way. He played like it
he
was.
played like it was champion, buddy. I mean, I never heard him play so well. But again, he found out the week that we quit recording, 2 days later, he found out he had COVID.
I think a lot of that too brought out a lot of the best of us because, during that kind of season where you're having to say goodbye to loved ones and friends that you know, and you hear about people going, so then, it's like we were trying to play and sing like it may be our last time to do it. So I think that's why that this stuff came out so special. It's because we were all playing like it may be. We never know when's the last time we're going to get to do it. So
Exactly, and your harmonies, of course, family harmonies are just amazing as it is, but your family's harmonies are just incredible. And Come and Dine, it was like #1 for, 7 or 8 weeks, right?
7 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, harmony singers, if it's totally different than the family harmony singing, and a lot of people, they can go, families can go like 20 years and then get back together and just sound like it was yesterday. Yeah. Did you grow up singing with you? I mean, I know you sang a lot with your father, but as a kid, were you?
actually, I was more, musical. I started out playing drums, went over to the guitar, then piano. I played a lot of different instruments. I was blessed that way, and it always came easy for me. But I didn't really start singing until I was probably in high school, and I was in and out of different bands. I made my lead vocal debut on Hee Haw. That was the first time I ever got out from behind the drums. I was singing a song I wrote. I guess I was still a teenager at the time.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was kind of a late bloomer vocally.
Yeah.
I did know harmonies and stuff. My cousin and I used to get together and play every summer, but I was more of the band. I was the musician, but I did learn how to sing harmonies. How I could hear the harmonies, and so I would sing along with him some. But I would sing to myself. I'd be on a lawnmower, didn't think anybody could hear me, and I'd be singing at the top of my lungs. But I was a late bloomer singing.
Well,
So that's not something that I started to.
Were you aware that, I mean, obviously you're aware that this is your dad, but were you aware of how big of a star that your dad was?
Well, man, it's I've gotten asked that question a lot of times. A lot of the people that think that are talking about how big they were when they were country.
Yeah.
But to me, I grew up when they were singing gospel music.
Yeah.
They wore coolest clothes in the gospel
Yeah.
music. They had, they rode on a bus. They had Beatle boots, and I mean, I thought, and they would sell out everywhere they went when they were in the gospel world. So I thought they were as big as when you're 5 years old, man. I mean, I thought they were as big as the Beatles back then, and to me, they were.
They were, yeah.
And that was way before they had country hit records and this and that. But on the other hand, it was just something that. It was just like it was the family business. It's like, everybody's dad did something different. And in this town, Hendersonville, Tennessee, we rode the school bus with Ray Price's children. We rode the bus with Johnny and June's daughter, the Melsons, the guy that wrote Pretty Woman, and Blue Bayou. So we were surrounded by a lot of other people that did the same. Their daddies kind of did some of the same thing. I went to school with Roy Orbison's son, and so it was. To me, we knew that I thought they were as big as the Beatles, but I also thought they were as big as anybody else's kids I was going to school with.
Right. What the thing with your dad too, you know, like I mean, he's so recognizable. I mean, you can't just put on some dark glasses and disappear in the crowd. I mean, you know, you stand out, and even when I was beforehand, we were talking off camera, but Dottie Rambo used to always say that Bill Golden was the best looking man in gospel music. Every woman in the world, you know, had a crush on him, and then you just took that from gospel on into the country and everything else.
Well, you know what's wild is you mentioned Dottie Rambo.
Yeah.
When we were kids, Dad was friends with all the other groups. And I can remember them coming to the house one night, and I played drums for them. It was like show and tell when you got company. Sing them a song, or you know, show your kids off. Yeah. And I remember we were playing, and my brother Rusty wound up playing drums with them when he was 12 years old. He was a good drummer, and they saw that talent early on. I think the only reason Mom and Dad let him leave town is they knew that he was with a family and a good family, but their music influenced us a lot too, because we listened to a lot of that growing up. The 3-part harmony and that family harmony, that was as good as it got, you know. And they were all great friends. But I can remember our house caught fire when the Rambos were coming over to eat tacos one night, and my mother. That's back before there was a Mexican restaurant on every corner, but my mother had learned how to make her own corn tortillas, and my dad would bring her a certain flour from out west, a certain kind of cornmeal that you couldn't, it was not an international section of the supermarket back then. Yeah. There was a small, but he would bring this special stuff from out west, and she rolled her own corn flour tortillas and cooked them, and she was getting the grease hot when the Rambos were coming to have homemade tacos that night.
And I think
the house caught fire that night, right?
Yeah, it was. I think it was Gary McSpadden's wife, Carol, and maybe Hazel Slaughter, Henry Hazel.
Okay.
They may have been the ones that taught Frugine how to make tacos.
Okay. Well, I was the Rambos that were coming over that night, I think maybe so, something like that. So, you know, didn't mean to get caught off on the Rambo deal, but
no, you can. Hey, she was my mom. I mean, you know, so I'm loving this. I know the fans will love it too.
Yeah,
I go back the Three Nails. You know, that you guys did the Rambos and the Oakers Boys and the Stamps. Yeah.
He's the only one that could get away with wearing a skirt. He had the legs that could go with it.
And Tony Brown was in it too. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Tony Brown. Yeah.
Charity's Children.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sure
See,
was.
a lot of history and things. And speaking of, we're going to talk a lot about the music and everything too. But you also wrote a book during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's Behind the Beard.
Yeah.
And I love that title. Are some of these stories in the book of your gospel years as well, and growing up and everything?
Starts out from my childhood, actually. The book goes from the very beginning. My parents, I grew up on a big cotton and peanut farm. My dad was a big farmer. My granddaddy he had a lot of land too, and my uncles, they're all still farmers down there. We still got the old home place, but my son of my first cousin, or grandson of him, he farms our old home place there now, because they farm like 5,000 acres or 5,000 or 6,000 acres of land.
Yeah.
They're the biggest farmers down there, but it's my uncle's boys.
Wow, that's awesome and they're still doing it and everything.
Yeah, they still do it. They got these, farming equipment is. It's not cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about like a new cotton picker, $750,000.
Yeah.
That's $750,000 just for
something you're only using about 10 days a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you think everything going on, you know, like in the world, and you know, all these things. People don't realize that so much of that the farmer gets hit the worst,
Yeah.
through, like trade wars and through, you know, policies and decisions, and people forget about the farm.
That was the first quartet music he did, was with the Future Farmers of America Quartet. So
Really?
FFA Quartet.
First quartet I ever sang with I was in 11th grade in high school. I'd been singing with my sister and my little brother trio, but I got to sing with a quartet. And we would compete with other quartets and other bands. Either your Future Farm, the FFA chapter is what they were. Each school had a FFA chapter. Future Farmers of America. They would, and they could either have a group to sing or a band to play, and they could compete with other schools. So we had a quartet, and we'd compete with other groups, other chapters with quartets. So we won the whole South Alabama, all that. We went to state finals, and then the lead singer, his family took him to California to pick fruit, and so we found out the week of the finals that he wasn't going to go with us, and we couldn't do it. So that was a real disappointment.
So he still has those fruit stains on his hands.
But yeah, that was my, growing up playing country music with my sister and my little brother, country songs basically, and Grand Ole Opry type songs we had heard. Hank Williams, I Saw the Light, and old Roy Acuff had The Great Speckled Bird.
Yeah.
Well, I recorded both of those songs on recording with Chris and Rusty. Those are songs that took me back to my childhood.
Yeah,
They're on these albums.
There are 3 separate albums, and let me tell you, you got to get all 3, but there is something for every. This is like the history of country music, really.
And
because,
gospel.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that, to me, gospel is country music, the kind of gospel, traditional gospel, it's kind of like a cousin to it. And, we have rockabilly, we have the outlaw, we have all these different movements in country music. But, like the Hall of Fame, I think there should be a gospel section of the Hall of Fame.
Well, that's what Dad was talking about the night that he got inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Was he said he got to looking at the walls, and it was really not the quartet type style of gospel singing that the first gospel songs that he sang were Hank Williams, Kitty Wells, Mansion Over the Hilltop, and the Louvin Brothers gospel stuff, and the songs that he had heard on the Grand Ole Opry as a
That's
child.
what we were playing as little kids and singing it, and people was eating it up. I mean, them little country churches.
Yeah.
You come out there and a little kid playing guitar and my sister playing mandolin and us going into I Saw the Light.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could whip a guitar when I was little. So,
Well, because see, the albums is we have one that's devoted just to the gospel, and that's called Old Country Church, and then we have the Country Roads, which is the traditional gospel, and then the Southern Accents is kind of a little bit of gospel. Country rock, and and which is all the music I love.
R&B and rock and roll songs,
Yeah.
like my grandson, Chris's son, Elijah, he sang Stand By Me, the old R&B classic.
Yeah.
And just tore it up, man. And he also sang Elvira and Bobby Sue with Chris. So
Elijah's
and
got
I
that
didn't even-
blue-eyed soul.
I let my kids and my grandkids sing Elvira and Bobby Sue, and I just stood there and applauded them. They had the group with Chris and Rusty and Aaron, and
Elijah.
they really kicked it now.
Now, we talked a lot about when you were in the gospel and music, which you still are. You still do a lot of gospel, and just as big there as probably in country. It's just because people know your music from both, before and after. But there was a time that, you know, that as you have to feed your family, and you try to do different things, and they were a little hard on you guys, weren't they, when you tried to do a little bit of crossing over a little bit?
It's all in the
Yeah,
book.
that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all in the book. But yeah, it was I felt like and made a decision in my mind of what we should do.
Yeah.
And I shared it with my singing partners. And at that time, you know, they couldn't quite see what I was seeing.
Yeah.
But it took a year or two for some of them to
Yeah.
finally see it. But I knew that we needed to evolve into country music. What I've wanted to do was, and I love gospel music as much as anybody, and I still love gospel music. But we sing gospel music because we love gospel music. It's not because of any other reason other than we love gospel music.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. So it gives us a chance to, you know, and it's sometimes they shut the churches down.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to go to church.
Yeah.
We allowed the gospel songs to bring the spirit of back alive within our home, right in this room.
Yes.
And then from there, we went into Ben Isaac's studio and recorded it there. But first, it starts in your heart.
Yes. Yes.
And then getting your family together and get everybody's mind and heart in one accord. And
Yes.
you get to playing and singing these songs. And it's the harmonies again. It's those harmonies and the feel of the music, the simplicity of the feel.
Yeah.
It's not overly complicated. Some people, there's a lot of incredible musicians that sometimes they're so good that it's almost
too perfect.
yeah, it gets over. You know, I mean, there's some people it's so fast it's hard to keep up with it. But it's about feel to me.
Yeah.
Music is all about feel.
I agree.
And the music, a person sings a line. Sometimes the musicians, if they feel in that what he's singing, they answer that with music.
Yeah.
It speaks. Music speaks as well as vocal speaking.
Yeah.
If it's all in sync and they're all in the right mood and in the feel together. That's what all of this happened, man. Everybody got in sync.
Yeah.
And I mean, out of one song, we'd go right into the next one, and it was like, it was exhilarating for us, man. We'd cut them things, and then you play it and listen to it and say, wow.
But you know, it wasn't just the gospel songs, but it was like, you know, there's 34 songs there. I think there's a dozen gospel songs.
Yeah.
But our whole goal of, on every session, when you talk about the gospel thing, you know, we'd say, let the notes we choose and the songs we sing bring you joy today.
Yes.
So if it's bringing him joy, maybe it'll translate and bring everybody else joy that listens to it.
Yes.
So, or give them the same kind of healing that we got from it whenever we were doing it. So.
Yeah, it's like Chris and different guys, they would lead prayer before every session for that day, and it's kind of how we wanted to make sure that we didn't forget the reason we were there and what brought us there.
Yes.
And again, we sing gospel because we love gospel.
Because you love it. Yeah.
And and the same thing with rock and roll.
Yes.
We wanted that to
I know.
enjoy too.
Exactly. And there's
We
a lot
enjoy
of
that too.
Yeah. There's a lot of great rock and roll songs that are about the Lord and about life and family and
And there's a thing I started to say there about, I felt like what the Oak Ridge Boys needed to do at the time in the early 70s. I felt like we had peaked out in gospel music. I felt like we needed to evolve and sing songs about 7 days a week rather than 1 day a week.
Exactly.
So we was trying to feed our families, and a lot of people don't want to hear about gospel other than on Sunday.
Right, right, yeah.
And I mean, it's just a lot of people don't like gospel to begin with, but if they do, they'll tolerate it on Sundays about it.
Right.
And then 6 days of the week, they don't care about it, don't want to hear it. So that's the world we were living in as singers.
Yeah.
Hey, you got a great team of singers here. Then you got people like the Statler brothers who are doing real well in country
That's
music.
right, yeah.
What have they got that we don't have? It's style. They sing a little different style than we do. We have more of a gospel background because we were successful gospel singers.
That's right, yeah.
But anyhow, I finally talked the guys into and got us with Jim Halsey to manage the group because Jim was the top manager in country music at that time. So if you're going to make it in there, you need someone that's connected there.
Yeah.
And that was the deal, is to get Jim Halsey. He got us a record deal with ABC Records that got us the Y'all Come Back Saloon with Ron Chancey. And Ron Chancey picked a lot of the songs that we had through that time period for 10 years there. He was the main guy for us.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate.
You are, and see, it's all part of God's plan because you got to perform for presidents and world leaders and shed light to them that He implanted in you. I think you reached more people with the gift of God. You don't have to just be singing hallelujah, hallelujah all day, because God gave us the world. If we write about a tree and we're Christians, that doesn't make it a bad song because it's not, praise the Lord, this is a tree. God made the tree.
Because of the country music hit records that
Yeah.
the Oak Ridge Boys had, they always included a gospel song or
Yes,
two
yeah.
in their show, and they
Look
got
at our
every
albums.
concert,
We
yeah.
always put a gospel song, at least one, on every album.
and they got to sing gospel. They got to sing gospel to more people after they went country than they ever did when they were
Yeah,
gospel.
that-
Their
that's what-
audience got so much.
And we still sing gospel music. I mean, it's we do it every night.
Yes.
We sing 3 or 4 gospel songs every night.
and incredible. And I think that like you say, you got to take that gift and share it with people. Sorry, I'm stuttering here. Share it with people to touch their lives that maybe didn't get to have a chance to be welcomed into church or never been to church, or gospel and country. And like you say, the country rock sounding songs. This is the fabric of America.
It
really.
is. It's all American music,
Yeah.
really, to me.
Yeah, I agree. And we talked a little bit about Dottie Rambo earlier. You cut 2 of her songs on your gospel, Too Much to Gain to Lose and Shelter in the Arms of God. And I bet you all were singing that back then in the day too.
Yeah, I had recorded Sheltered in the Arms of God with the Oak Ridge Boys back in the 60s, I guess.
Yes.
In the late 60s when we were recording. And actually when we were singing, touring with the Rambos. We did a lot of touring, the Oak Ridge Boys and the Rambos. I was close to Buck and Dottie. And Buck and I basically did the booking for the groups.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we set the schedule, we decided who promoters we'd work with, and but he and I communicated a lot. I did with Buck, and we toured a lot with the Rambos, more than any other gospel group. We worked with the Goodmans in the beginning there, more than anybody, and then when they went on their own more, we tied in with the Rambos and did a bunch of work, and that's and then it evolved with the 3 Nails and all that when we were doing a lot of shows with the Rambos.
Well, and the reason why I brought that up is what's kind of neat. These songs now, like Too Much to Gain to Lose and Shelter in the Arms of God, they're considered hymns. They're in hymn books, and you got to sing them like the original introduction to the world. You got to do these songs, so that had to be kind of very, and even with your country songs too, but to be in hymn books and all those things now and be considered a standard,
Yeah.
I mean, we think of hymn books, we think of like 1800s, our minds want to go to that, but in reality, you all were there when these songs were being brought to light.
Right.
So that's what I say, it had to be a very cool experience to go and look back and record these a second time around.
Those were the golden days of gospel music.
Yes. It was.
Literally,
Yeah.
that was the golden days
It
right
was,
there.
and it was when Dottie Rambo would be singing you a song that she had just written that week somewhere, and you'd hear a brand new song that she was doing, and she'd be pitching you a song, and today some of those songs are standards.
Yeah, and of course, the same would happen with Bill Gaither a little later on.
Yeah.
A lot of his became that way as well, and Stuart Hamblin and all those type of people. And you all got to be the catalyst that introduced it to the world. That's what Dottie used to say. I like to write them, and then they get to dress them up and put cowboy hats on them, and Sandy Patty could put curlers and chiffon dresses on my songs. And she said they're like my kids. Different people dress them up the way they, that they feel that they can do them. But she always loved the Oak Ridge Boys' cuts of her songs. I think you guys and Jimmy Davis, cut more of her songs than anyone.
And Dad usually was the one that sang the Dottie songs
Yes, that's why-
because
I had that more of a country voice,
that's right.
Yes.
And they were
and
country
I
songs.
related to her songs too.
Yeah, and you've worked with Billy Graham and all these people that you probably, when you first started out, did you ever think that would happen? Did you think that you would go be with presidents and be with someone like Billy Graham, or you just wanted to put food on the
Well,
table?
I was a visionary type person. I could
Yeah.
see some of these things sometimes,
Yeah.
before it was just, you see it, it can happen. But then it's that getting
road
to
there.
there,
Yeah,
and all the people that tell you that it can't happen along the way, and you keep going anyway when everybody says it can't. It can because you can see it can. And you follow your visions in life. If you can see it, it can happen. And people that have the overnight success, usually it's the people that, it's a lot of entertainers, there's the ones that, like in rock and roll, it's a fast business, as the old saying used to be. They're here today and gone later today or gone tomorrow.
yeah,
So it's a fast game out there. People, you got to be bringing something new out there all the time. But it's an exciting business. It's a challenge, and everybody can't handle the commitments that it takes to make it.
yeah.
That's just the facts of it's way too much sacrifice
Yeah,
to be able to make it for most people.
yeah.
They can't handle sleeping on the floor and on the ground and airports on the floor and doing all night flights and stuff like that, and got to be on the next day when you get there. And but you got to pace yourself. You got to keep your focus is the main thing.
Was the painting, did that help you kind of, you got the hard work, did that kind of help you, the painting help you kind of relax from it?
It did. It was at a time, and I've not painted recently, but at a time that I felt like I was needing some expression, I felt like I didn't have much. It was after I went back with the Oak Ridge Boys. I've always loved art.
Yeah.
And I would go to museums, and especially in Europe, go a lot of the great, beautiful museums there. And then in a lot of major cities, they got great museums, and like some of the Impressionist art. I respect the realist artists, but that's such a talent to be able to make it look so real. But that's one of my paintings right there.
That's gorgeous.
That's Monet's garden, his water garden in Giverny, France.
Beautiful.
I've been there twice and took photographs, and that was a spring visit I did when all the water lilies were first blooming and all the flowers around it. But
It's gorgeous.
I painted on the road is when I painted. I would take my supplies with me onto the bus and get to a town. I'd take my bag in, come back to the bus and take my canvas in and an easel and then another thing with paints in it. I'd set up an easel by a window in my room, never turn on the television that day, and sit there and pull out some of my photographs that I'm using for reference, spread them out, and stand there and spend a day in front of a canvas. But I'm real slow. See, it takes everything on that painting has been painted probably 6 or 7 times.
Wow.
Like the little flowers, they've got the water lilies. They got probably 6 or 7 different layers in each one of those water lilies because you get a little different color where the sun's hitting it and the shadow side of the flower and all. It's little things like that it forces you to think about to make it more believable as you're putting paint on a flat surface.
Well,
it could make it look like it has depth to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's because I was thinking you are so gifted in that and everything, and it's such a time-consuming thing to do to be a great artist. And so I thought that it might have been part of your relax down from the high of being on the road and the worries of, getting from this plane to that plane or this bus to that bus.
Like I said, I spent 3 or 4 or 5 months on one piece.
Awesome.
And you paint the different layers of it, and then you get another layer to give it depth, it's certain ways that you can use paint to create optical illusions, I guess is what it would be, but it's to give depth to a painting, to a flat surface, and that's what you try to do, and it's a challenge. I respect people that can do it good, but I just kind of piddle at it.
Oh, you're amazing at it, and I tell you what, the fact that you guys were able to do these 3 albums, and you were able to write a book during the pandemic. I mean, all of us watching, we need to up our game, and because that's a lot of commitment and a lot of work. But like you were saying, you turned a positive from the negative.
Yeah.
Now, in the book, when you're writing the book, was it relaxing? Did it help you put away things that you just wanted to bury and never talk about again?
No.
No?
What it was Scott England. He approached me about it. He approached me probably 6 or 7 times about writing this. Then Chris ran into him at the post office one day, and he was there, had a truckload of books mailing out, and he told Chris, said, I've been wanting to talk to your daddy. Said, I've talked to him and told him I want to write a book, so I've been trying to get him to let me write a book. So Chris said, well, here, let me call him. He knew I was down at the farm that week. And anyhow, Scott, he put me on the phone with Scott. We talked, and Scott, I told him I was down at the farm in Alabama, and I'd be there for another 4 or 5 days. They could come down. We could start. I'd like him to see where I'm coming from and my sister and my family there. And anyhow, he came to Alabama on the family farm to visit first. And then he lives up the street here, but then he'd come here every day. We'd meet 2 or 3 times a week for 7 or 8, 9 months or something. We probably got together 60, 75 times. Wow. And he'd come over and spend a couple hours, and he'd have his little recorder. We'd sit on the front porch a lot out here in the nice weather, and he'd put his little recorder there, and you'd forget it sitting there, but then you'd just start talking. And I told him, I said, man, talk to whoever else in my life. Get their view of it. I'm looking from my eyes. You know, everybody else, they got a different view of everything going on.
Yeah.
Talk to the people I'm in business with. Talk to my family. I said, you can talk to my wives, my ex-wives, whoever.
Now that's trusting.
So Chris's mother told some things that I wouldn't have told in there. She got into some of my unfaithfulness and told some stories that I would not have told, but
And some that I never would have known had they not been.
he wouldn't have known these stories if she hadn't have told them.
Yeah.
But there's stories that actually happened. In fact, I learned things in my own book from Fro Jean's standpoint of things that were going down when she and my girlfriend at the time got together and just said, hey, all that's in there. So, yeah.
You got to buy it just for that story alone.
It's the good and the bad in there.
Well, I tell you, I appreciate you guys sitting down with me and giving me this much time. And but as we kind of close up, do you have a message that you'd like to say to people? Because we are so divided. You're a family, you're a tight-knit family. You see what's going on because you're out on the road and seeing families falling apart over politics, over fighting on the news like you talked about. I think the news has become, just like you said, the instigator of the world, and you know. But do you have a message that you'd like to send out to some of the people that how you all were able to, other than turning the news off? Do you think that's the best message, or to stay together with everything going on?
My message was to be, if you have visions to do something, it's important to follow your visions. Because I believe that if you don't follow your visions, you'll quit having visions.
Exactly.
And it's what I've done throughout my life.
Yeah.
Me leaving home and coming to Nashville to join the Oak Ridge Boys was a thing that me riding a tractor and plowing all day and singing at the top of my voice, you know. It's things that I could see that I wanted to do, and then I followed that, and I followed it, and man, I followed it through life. And even when people thought that the first 10 years I was with the Oak Ridge Boys, everybody thought I was foolish for trying to be a gospel singer and starving to death just to be able to sing, you know.
Yeah.
But it's things you learn along the way, and there's things that are more important to money than me, and it's things that kind of gives you peace of mind and things that touch your heart in life. And I feel like that I'm still following my visions, and I feel like that anybody, if you got a passion and a vision, you should follow it. And it don't matter who says it can't be done, it can be done.
Yeah.
But there's one way it can't be done, and if you don't try to do it.
That's right.
And so what I'm doing is every day I'm still trying to do it.
That's great.
I'm still climbing that mountain, and I've always been a guy that felt like, you know, when people think, oh, I've made it, that's when they peaked.
Yes.
That's as far as they ever get. Usually when you get in the mind that you've made it is when you peaked.
Yes.
I never quite made it. I'm still trying to make it.
Yes, right. Well, I tell you.
I'm sitting here today still trying to make it in the music business.
I love it. I love it. He's very humble, and that's why people love you so much. I think is because you have that humble spirit about you. I've never heard a bad thing about you, and that's saying
Well, I've
something
made
in
more
this
than
business.
my share of mistakes.
They're
I
in their book.
tell you.
And what about you, Chris? What would you like to say? Do you have? Because you're out still going and preaching in churches and singing in churches.
Well, I don't preach.
You don't speak. I mean, right?
I play music, man. I'm an entertainer, and I never got tired of the message
Yes.
of the gospel.
Right.
I try to do 3-minute sermons, 3 or 4 minute sermons. To me, I found out that music is the
Yes.
plow.
Yeah.
Music, in farm terms, music is the plow.
That's right.
It can tell a hard heart. and soften it up and get it ready for the word. But I usually let the songs do the preaching, and I just try to bring them a little joy, spread as much light as I can
Exactly.
while I'm there, and let them forget about their problems for about 75 minutes. That's my
And that's what we
goal.
need
Is
now.
what I do, and the same with far as love does win.
That's right.
Love wins out in the end, and
That's right.
about the only thing that you can really count, only people you can really count on in this world is family.
That's right.
And so, family.
Yeah.
Family, the family, the family. So
Yeah, I agree. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for doing this and welcome us in your home and sharing this music with us and the book. Everybody, you have to get the book, Life Behind the Beard, and then we're going to have all the information about the CDs and the links and everything on the screen as well. There's something for everybody. If you don't like gospel, then you can get the country. If you don't like, traditional country, there's some rock and roll on there. You have no excuse. There's something for everybody on these records, and you're going to love them. You're going to love them. And thank you guys so much. I
Thank you,
appreciate it so
Larry.
much.
So good to be with you here today.
Well, thank you.